And at some point, God kind of releases you from going there.
God brought us out of the good church we attended for 30 years.
When Pastor Jesse announced that we were having the fasting here, you mentioned you had struggled just a little bit with that.
You can be raised in church and know who God is and still not have a relationship with God. And that was kind of what I was feeling in my spirit of why I needed to pray for them. I just about lost it. I probably did. I probably cried. And I said, absolutely. I decided that even though I knew some of these would probably go to church somewhere else, and which was a good thing, that was okay, that I still invited all three people to church, to the meal with us.
Yeah.
And, they said, one had to work and the other two was, going with the family. As a grandparent, I pray for my grandkids and my kids all the time. And sometimes you see quick results and sometimes you don't, but you still don't want to give up.
28 years in ministry, children and grandchildren, accomplishments and accolades. Why would God want to make any drastic changes in your life if you had achieved all these things? And yet God did for our next guest. She not only came to the mill after a long time serving elsewhere in the kingdom, but she accepted the challenge to fast for 3 people, which would reveal to her a whole new depth to the faith God was trying to build in her. He who began a good work in us is faithful to complete it. Welcome Kathy Martin, whose story very much illustrates this ongoing work of the Spirit. Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
It's great to have you here today.
Thank you.
We're going to start with some quick fire questions. So these are just fun questions just to kind of get us loosened up and ready to go. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. So what was your favorite toy or game as a child?
Probably Barbies.
Oh, nice. Now, do you prefer letters or email?
I love letters, but emails are the ways everybody's going.
Yeah. Was there ever a food that you didn't want to eat, but when you tried it, you loved it?
Probably asparagus.
Oh, that is a good one. How old is the oldest pair of shoes in your closet?
Oh my gosh. Probably 10 years, maybe.
Okay.
So,
That's,
maybe.
that's not too bad. I
Yeah.
think I have shoes pretty old too. What would be your favorite dessert?
Oh, my favorite dessert. Well, chocolate ice cream is my favorite dessert. I don't make it, but that's my favorite dessert. Or chocolate cake.
Oh, okay.
Anything chocolate.
Nice.
So, but I did make sourdough snickerdoodle cookies yesterday. So,
Oh,
those
sourdough ones. Okay, that's
They're really good.
interesting. Let's get started. So, Kathy, you're pretty new to the mill. A lot of people don't know too much about you, possibly. So, you actually did grow up in the church and you've served faithfully over the years. Could you tell us a little bit about your history with church?
Well, I did grow up in the church. My dad was a pastor most of my life at home and did a lot of things for my dad. I was his secretary and did things for him. And then when we got married, I moved from Tennessee. I was born and raised in St. Louis, but actually moved a lot because my dad was a pastor at the time that you stayed at a church maybe a year. So as a child, I moved a lot, So then I got married and moved from Tennessee to Indiana. And my husband and I got involved in church, and we tried several ones, and finally got involved in one church in particular that was there for 28 years, maybe 30 years, and ended up being the administrator, the office administrator, the bookkeeper to children's pastor, where I was children's pastor for about 28 years, and that was my passion. My passion is
Wow.
administration and children, love them, and things, just went on for there. Very involved. We went to every service. The doors were open. We were usually there. So
That's amazing. So you're at a church for almost 30 years, really. And I know they had some things going on there. And at some point, God kind of releases you from going there. And you land here at the mill. Can you tell us about that process between leaving there and then finding a home here at the mill?
yes, we did attend there for a lot of years, and some things changed, and our life things there, and I did feel like God. We were not a couple to leave a church if something was going good or bad,
Hmm.
But we felt like God released us, and we tried a couple of other churches here in Noblesville, and just couldn't seem to make a connection. Loved the churches we went to, loved the praise and worship, loved the preaching. But in that process, I had a brother had a stroke, took
Hmm.
care of him, lived in my home for a year. COVID hit. So, like a lot of places, no place to go. Then we moved my brother into an assisted living. And then my husband and I said, okay, it's time to get back into church. And I thought, okay, how do I tell my husband I don't want to go back there? Like I said, we love the people, we love the church, but just could not make a connection.
Hmm.
Um, and finally told him, and he goes, well, I feel the same. So we started attending a couple of the churches. We tried one other church and just didn't feel like that was it. And then one day at the church we was attending, I felt like that God dropped in my spirit the mill. And I'm like, the mill, that's a church. And this was during church that we was attending somewhere. So when we got home, I told my husband about it. So we looked up the mill on the website. Well, at that time, there wasn't a website that
Yep.
was very informational. Thank God that that has been changed. But we decided to try it. So we came one Sunday and walked in. One of the things we was looking for was ladies ministries, men's ministries, children's ministries, outreach,
Hmm.
just, a lot of different things, not just going to church.
Right.
And we left, we went to dinner, and my husband looked at me and said, as far as I'm concerned, we're no longer looking. And was like, have been here ever since. So God brought us out of a good church, out of the good church we attended for 30 years, and then, a couple of other churches. But he brought us here, and that Sunday we felt at home. We felt like this is where God had called us to.
Yeah. Well, I know that family is also really important to you. Can you tell me about your family? You've got kids and grandkids and good relationships with them.
Yes, I have 3 children. I have a boy, a son that has now, his family lives in North Carolina,
Mm.
and then 2 daughters that live here in Noblesville. I have 10 grandchildren. I love all of them dearly. So I had 3 wonderful in-laws, 2 daughter-in-laws, 1 daughter-in-law, and yeah, that's right, 2 son-in-laws and 1 daughter-in-law.
Okay.
And um, one granddaughter is married, and one is getting married in October. So we're going to have 2
Exciting.
married.
Yeah.
So love kids. My children and my family is above, before, after God is very
Family.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That that is amazing. Well, let's talk just a little bit kind of about the fasting. Previous to this fasting experience that we're going to talk about, what did you know or think about fasting?
I knew of fasting because I've been
Hmm.
in church, okay?
Sure.
And most of the time we had, beginning of the year fast. That was kind of a traditional thing.
Hmm.
Done it, enjoyed it, just, I guess it wasn't just something that I thought of doing all the time or
Yeah.
very often,
Hmm.
but wanted to participate when our churches did it,
For sure.
but I did believe in it, just
Yeah.
didn't really do it very well.
When Pastor Jesse announced that we were having the fasting here, you mentioned you had struggled just a little bit with that. It was kind of a process for you to figure out what names you wanted to write down to pray about. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I struggled with not so much doing the fast, but choosing 3 people and what do I fast? And I
Hmm.
appreciated the way Pastor Jesse explained it. You don't have to do a full fast. You can do a part fast. You can fast food. You can fast TV, whatever. But it needed to be our own choice between us and God.
Hmm.
And so I really started praying about it. And I just really struggled with the names. And right before Easter, the Sunday before Easter, he asked again to write your names down, put them on a card, and bring them and lay them on the altar. And I still hadn't done that. And I kind of had in my mind, I know God had told me kind of who to put. And that Sunday, I decided to write them down and put them on the altar. And it wasn't so much that I didn't believe in the fast, but it was kind of like people you want to come to church on Easter. And I knew these people probably either would be working or they'd be going to church with their family.
Mm.
So that kind of made a struggle in my heart of, were these really the right people? But I really believe that God did say these are the people I was to be praying and fasting for. It didn't mean they had to come to church with me, just praying and fasting for what they needed in their life.
Yeah. Well, one of those people was your grandson, Ezra. There was a conversation that you had with him, and that kind of confirmed for you that you wanted to put him on the list. Can you tell us about that conversation?
Well, basically, just I had most of my grandchildren are in church. Well, all of them are.
Yeah.
Their families had raised them in church and stuff. But as the kids get older and move out,
Hmm.
some of them, including Ezra, wasn't going to church regularly. And that regularly means what I thought of being, you don't miss a Sunday,
Yeah.
but we miss a Sunday too now too. So, things come up in your life. But we just had several little conversations that I just felt like in my spirit, I know he knows God, and some of my other grandchildren, I know they know God, but do they know who he really is? Do they have him? Do they have him in their heart? Do they
Mm.
have a relationship with them? You can be raised in church and know who God is and still not have a relationship with God.
Mhm.
And that was kind of what I was feeling in my spirit of why I needed to pray for them so that he would know what it really meant to have a relationship with God.
Yeah. Ezra and your grandkids do come over quite a bit,
Yes.
right? And he was there one afternoon, right? And he was leaving, and on the way out, you would kind of um, talked about a question.
Yeah, something came up about he was making a joke. I always tell him, drive safe, get home safe and
Yeah.
stuff. And he just made a joke about dying.
Mm.
And I was kind of like, well, we're all going to die one day, and we're going to go to heaven to be with God, and he goes, yeah, maybe. And my heart just sunk.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, he doesn't have that assurance. I know he knows how to have it, but I don't feel like he has the assurance. But I can't be the judge of that. And then that's when God really laid it on my heart that I needed to really start praying for him
Yeah.
so that he would have that assurance.
Awesome. Well, so we had the week of fasting. What did it look like for your fasting? I know there was lots of options that were given from the pulpit. What did you decide on for?
I decided to fast one meal a day.
Okay.
So that's what I did is one complete meal a day. And,
Was it breakfast, lunch, or
some
switched
days it
around
was
possibly?
different.
Yeah.
Some
Okay.
days it was different. Kind of depended upon our schedule. But most of the time it was either breakfast or lunch.
Yeah.
So
And then you replace that meal with time in
I
prayer
tried as
and
much as I
yeah,
could, wasn't perfect at,
and that's okay.
taking the complete time, but I did make sure that I prayed and I sought
Yeah.
God on behalf of those that I was praying for.
Yeah. You got some pretty immediate feedback from Ezra, him not knowing obviously that you were praying and fasting for him, but just in your conversations with him, what happened with Ezra that week? Something special?
Well, I decided that even though I knew some of these would probably go to church somewhere else, and which was a good thing, that
Hmm.
was okay, that I still invited all three people to church to the meal with us.
Yeah.
And, they said, one had to work and the other two was, going with the family. And I was happy about that.
Hmm.
And so on Easter, um, I knew they were going to be in church, and that's God can work wherever, and that's what was important to me. It didn't matter if they came to the mill. It was more important that they were going to church and could, g- get into a good relationship with God.
Hmm.
That Thursday after Easter, Ezra sent me a text that said, Mama, as Michaela and I have been talking, and we want to know if we can start coming to the church with you. I just about lost it. I probably did. I probably cried. And I said, absolutely. But what is going on with he was going to church some with his roommate?
Hmm.
And I said, what happened with going, with your roommate? And he said, that is a place to go, but we really have no connections. We really don't know anybody. And I said, absolutely, you guys can come. And at that point, Michaela, his girlfriend, I wasn't even sure what her church background was.
Mhm.
So I had no idea, what she believed, if she was raised in church or anything like that. I was just
Right.
very happy that they were going to attend church. Coming to church with us was a little bonus,
Yeah,
So
even better.
so I said absolutely, and then the very next Sunday they came to church. So they went to church on Easter, texted me on Thursday, and the next Sunday was here at the meal with us.
Well, tell us about that first Sunday then. Jesse had a sermon about needing to be seen, and that was the very first Sunday that they were here. And um, yeah, just tell us about that week.
Well, after he texted me on Thursday, then I was praying, God, they're planning on coming. And I was kind of putting God in a box, God, I don't know I don't know. I even told Pastor Jesse that they were coming. And I said, I'm so excited. And I says, I don't know what the relationship is with God. I know they know
Mhm.
God, but that's all I know. I says, I can't be the judge. In my opinion, in my thoughts, and then they might have had a relationship with God that I didn't know, a true relationship, but
Mhm.
I didn't know. And so I was kind of putting God in a box, saying, maybe they need this or maybe they need that. And I
Mhm.
finally had to stop and say, God, you know what they need. I don't know what they need.
Yeah.
And it's not up to me. They're coming because they want to be in the house of God and learn more. And that's what I want for them.
Mhm.
You give Pastor Jesse whatever message he needs to have. That Sunday, as the message started, I was going, God, are you serious? Because it was a lot of, Pastor Jesse, I don't know if people remember that sermon, but he started off with, at the end of this, we're going to have 3-minute conversations with somebody you don't know and all of this. And I'm like, they don't know anybody but me and Papa. And so my heart just kind of went, okay, God, you know what they need.
Mhm.
You know what they need. And then when Pastor Jesse spoke on people need to be known by their name and they need to be seen. And I looked and I thought about the text that Ezra had sent me that said, Mama, we don't really know anybody there.
Mm.
It's just a place to go.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, this must be what they need to hear, that they need to be known and they need to be seen. And if it's here at the mill, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So through the sermon, I just kept praying, God, you know what we all need, help us all. And
Yeah.
at the very end, Pastor Jesse said, the only people exempt from not talking to somebody is somebody if this is the very first Sunday you've been here. And that was Michaela. Because
Mhm.
Ezra had come a couple times. His
Mhm.
family's come and visited with us,
Yeah.
several times. So I thought, okay, that gives Michaela an out. So as soon as Pastor Jesse dismissed everybody to go find somebody to talk to, I said, Michaela, you don't have to do this. She goes, I'm fine with it. And I'm like, God knew what he needed.
Yeah.
And people around us, didn't know Ezra, didn't know Michaela, and they just started talking to him. And you could just see Ezra and Michaela taking it in, and
Mhm.
just being very, very open to it and receptive to it and
Yeah.
talking back with them.
Yeah.
And I just feel like God was showing them, this was a place they could call home if they
Yeah.
wanted to.
It's interesting that when you guys came here, you were looking for a connection, and it seems like Ezra was kind of in the same spot. He was
Right.
looking for a connection, and I have to tell you, I love looking back on a story where we see God working, because in that sermon, in that time of talking, in that 3 minutes, there was a connection that Ezra found.
Yes.
Right? Can you tell us about
Yes.
that?
Um, well, and that's part of like when we came here, part of our connection was, the different activities going on, but the
Yeah.
people made us feel so friendly.
Yeah.
They introduced themselves and just made us feel very welcome. Well, previous to that, I helped do the basketball concessions
Hmm.
for their tournament. And I got to really meet some people. And I really got to know JT a little better through that. So after that first sermon service that Michaela and Ezra was there and people were talking to each other, JT came over, who sits on the other side of the room where we sit, and he made a point to come over and give me a hug
Mhm.
and tell me thank you again, and then turn to Ezra and Michaela and introduce themselves to him.
Right.
And there was a connection between Ezra went through a career program called ABC's Career at Noblesville High School and had graduated but was still staying in that career and doing some schooling. And it turns out that when JT asked him what he was doing and stuff, when Ezra told him, JT goes, I work for that company. And there was just a connection there. And at that moment, Ezra was a little unhappy with his job. And JT says, well, let's work on this and give me your telephone number and I'll give you my telephone number and we'll stay connection. And it was they just hit it off, you know? So there was just
a beautiful connection.
A beautiful connection, you know? Somebody seen Ezra and knew him now and made him feel very welcome, which lots of people did. But there was a big connection with JT.
That is awesome. Well, even if that was the end of the story, that would be great. But we've got more to dig into. It seems like even just after these few weeks where they had been attending, Michaela and Ezra both were kind of ready to take a bigger commitment and step of faith. And they kind of surprised you with an announcement.
Yes. They asked me if they could come over for lunch, which is nothing unusual. You know, they call me, several grandkids can come over for dinner. Yes, you may. And so they said, can we come over next Sunday just for dinner? And I said, sure. And all week long, I was thinking, you know, we got baptism coming up. Pastor Jesse has announced this. And God just show me if I need to say anything. Because I knew Ezra had not been baptized. I didn't know about Michaela. And so I just prayed, God, you know, if this is something that they need to do and I need to say anything, then just open the door. So we was at home, had lunch, and we were playing cards. We like to play cards. We like to play games together. And Michaela looked at Ezra and said, Ezra, have you told Mama and Papa our surprise? And he goes, oh, not yet. And I said, what? And they said, we're going to be baptized. And I went, are you serious? And they go, yeah, we've talked to Pastor Jesse. We've already contacted him and we're going to be baptized. And Ezra said, I want to know if you'll read my paragraph for me. He says, do you think you could get through reading the paragraph for me? And I said, probably not, but I will try and I will be honored, you know? So God again told me, just wait. I'll open the door if you need to. And it's a decision they made, you know? So they were baptized. I think it was April 12th together. And it was awesome.
That is awesome. And you read
his thing. I cried.
And that's okay.
But I got through it.
Yeah. So, that is awesome. Good. Well, in the life of the church, it seems like connection and commitment is kind of hand in hand with serving. And you've had such a rich history of that at other churches, and now you're at the Mill. And so I'm curious how you find serving here, not even just you, but even Ezra, Michaela, how are you guys involved around here?
Well, and that is very important to me. That was one of the things we was looking for, as a place that we could get committed to. And serving is committing, you know. And so I first became involved with children's ministry, of course, because that's one of my first passions, you know. And then I was asked to work with Emerge. And again, that's with kids, and I love that. And so I did that. And with Emerge, I found out they had a couple of shelves that they needed reorganized. And I told Pastor JD that I would help him do that or do it for him. And he said, oh, do it. So I love organizing. Give me a closet or room and let me at it and take care of it. And that's what I did. And I loved it. And that just opened the door with Pastor Jesse and Angie with some more things that they needed, some organizing. So I did that, and then worked with the baseball team. Doing concessions, and I helped with that. And we was really struggling with volunteers for that, which we still are. So people that want to help, we would love to have you. And I decided to ask Ezra and Michaela because we needed, you know, someone. And you can't do this by yourself. You have to have at least one more person, if not two. And we didn't have anybody else to do it. And I said, well, let me see if I can get them. And I called Ezra and Michaela, and they said we would love to. And they came. We stayed a Sunday afternoon and served concessions, and they had so much fun and did an awesome job. And, you know, so serving is a big thing of being committed to a church. And that's what we was looking for, is someplace that we could really get involved and do some things with. So
I love that. Well, I know that you love your grandkids, you're praying for them on a consistent basis. Has the fasting continued along with that? And if not, would you be willing to kind of pick that challenge up later down the road if that was presented again?
I definitely still pray for my grandkids and children. And even this past week, God laid on my heart to continue praying for the other ones that was on my list.
Mm-hmm.
Even some of them were not, grandchildren. And but God just reminded me this week that I still needed to be praying for them.
Yeah.
And I thought about fasting. I haven't done it, but if that's what God leads me to, then yes, I would definitely be willing to do that. So
So, hypothetical question. If you hadn't prayed and fasted for Ezra, do you think he would have found his way to the mill and coming to church here or committed the way he has to his Christian walk?
about grandparents praying for their children and fasting,
Hmm.
I don't know what God would have done with Ezra's life if I hadn't prayed and fasted for him. I mean, God could have worked it out any other way
Hmm.
to get more involved in the church he was going to, but Ezra seemed to be that's not where he felt like he was supposed to be going.
Yeah.
So if I hadn't prayed and fasted for him, I don't know. Would he be coming here? I don't know because you know I just felt like I needed to do what God asked me to do and
Hmm.
to be obedient to that.
Yeah.
And God would have, you know, God will still do his work whether we do what we asked him to or not.
100%.
But then I missed the blessing of not getting to see it firsthand because I was
Hmm.
obedient.
Yeah. And you were obedient, and now you get to go to church with your
Yes,
grandson.
right.
What would you say to other people who maybe are on the fence about trying fasting for themselves?
I would say if God tells you to do it, you need to do it,
Hmm.
you know. And a great way to get involved is like a church wide fast, like we did. That was kind of opened the door for me, is, a church wide fast and wanting to become involved, as a community, doing it together.
Yeah.
But God used this fast in a tremendous way. And, you know, I'd be willing to do it again.
Well, can you talk to us just a little bit about how your faith has grown through this?
It's grown a lot
Hmm.
because as a grandparent, I pray for my grandkids and my kids all the time. And sometimes you see quick results and sometimes you don't, but you still don't want to give up,
Yeah.
And I pray for my adult kids that are very big believers. They know God, they have a personal relationship with Him, they're involved in their churches, but I still pray for them. And
Hmm.
I want to continue doing that. And with my grandkids, that they put God first, whatever they do. I just had a granddaughter just left again Friday to go back to college for another year
Yeah.
and just see big things happening with them. And I know prayers of grandparents and moms and dads and aunts and uncles are important.
Hmm. Advice for those grandparents, aunts, uncles who are still praying for family members and just people around.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
We may not see the result, but it's there. We're praying a hedge of protection around them.
Hmm.
Praying, I've been praying for my grandkids' spouses for years. You know,
Yeah.
um, that they fulfill what God has for their plan.
Hmm.
As they're getting older and graduating, that looking for careers, that just praying that you know they follow God's path. And my grandparents, both of my grandmothers, were very big influences in my life because
Hmm.
I know they prayed for me. And they repeatedly told me that, and I just don't think we should give up on them.
Yeah. So it does sound like not only just praying for them, but let people know that
Yes,
you're praying for them as
yes,
well.
yes.
That is amazing. Was there anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
Just that we're very happy to be a part of the meal. Thank you for everybody of opening arms. It took us a while. It'll be almost 3 years. Well, it will be 3 years in September that we
Hmm.
started coming. And it's taken a while for us to really start getting committed and back to serving. Serving has helped me get to know people Every ministry that I become involved in or help do or just participate in, I get to meet more and more people. And that's helping open the doors of getting to know each other, And on that, God showed me that I can't always ask people to come up to me and talk to me, that it works both ways. Even if you're new, when you're new, it's easier to sit back. But as you start coming and you've been here even for a few months, God told me, he said it works both ways, So
I love your testimony. I love that you're someone who came in and was ready to continue serving and not just think, well, I've served for 30 years at another place. I've kind of done my time. I'm a firm believer in no matter how old you are, whether young or old, there's something for you to do here.
And that kind of tells me, I tried the just go to church and be a pew warmer, chair warmer, and it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
It's not what God had for me. And as I got older, I was like, okay, let somebody else do children's ministry or whatever, but I missed it. It was something God placed in my heart.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to serve him as long as I can.
Well, thank you for listening to his voice.
Thank you.
We're benefiting from that, and
I'm
really
honored.
appreciate that.
I'm honored to be able to do it.
Thank you, Kathy. Whether you're an old or young believer, God still works on us to accomplish what he sets out to do. And one of his primary goals is to unite us all as one family. It's so important to realize the small things. Those things we may think are irrelevant in our eyes are actually what makes the difference. What if Kathy hadn't obeyed the still, small voice to pray and fast? What if Ezra did not come to church with his girlfriend? I know these are hypothetical questions, but they still beg some consideration. For some reason, God has chosen to include us in his plan. It behooves us to be ready and willing to obey his every prompting. Next time, we're going to talk about vision. How's your vision? See you next time.